Hello, English 132 students. I ended my last video saying that there were a couple of things that were slipping my mind about databases. Here are the things I wanted to tell you. Our library subscribes to pretty large databases. It includes many periodical titles, lots of newspapers and magazines and journals, and the annual subscription for our databases is hundreds of thousands of dollars. But libraries pay that much because there's so much that they get with those subscriptions. Instead of subscribing individually to all those different magazines and newspapers and journals, part of what you get with the databases, research databases, is the search capability. It's organized in a way. It's different from the internet. The internet, you type in a term, a search term, and it will bring you websites that have that term in it. Roughly, that's how it works. The more often the website uses that term, probably the more likely that website will be near the top of your list of results. Databases are organized more like kind of like a file cabinet. In fact, you often see the little icon of a file, right? When you file something in a file cabinet, you make folders of things that belong together. Maybe the most simple thing would be like something that's alphabetized, A, B, C, and D. But in a research database, articles that are on a common topic get organized together. So you might look for happiness, and you'll find that there's a big folder full of things that are about happiness. But then within that folder, there will be things like sort of the causes of happiness, or spiritual dimensions of happiness, or biology of happiness, and articles that are on those similar subjects that get filed together. So when you're doing a database search, unlike an internet search, the database search requires that you figure out what terms the database uses. Like, for example, um, instead of Instead of um, cancer causing, it might use the word carcinogenic or something like that. Um, so sometimes you have to figure out, you have to try synonyms and then see if you can figure out what terms they're using. Um, in the classroom, we could have done a demonstration of that, but I don't think that's really practical here. Another thing to consider is that um, the the quality of the information in a database is somewhat more trustworthy than out on the general internet, because, as you know, anybody can post anything on the internet, but the database was compiled by people who are, professionals putting together what they consider to be information that's valuable enough that people would pay for it, right? So if you're a library and you're building a database, or subscribing to a database of periodical articles, of course, the bigger the database, the better. Students are frustrated when they're looking for an article, they see the title of it, but the library doesn't subscribe to it. But consider this: the larger the database is, the more obscure the journals and magazines are, um, and it sort of thins out the quality. What do I mean? If you have a small database, you're probably going to include in it the best, most credible sources. If you have a big database, you have to start including sites of or articles of lower and lower quality, right? Thing is, sometimes those obscure, lower quality periodicals might have an article that's valuable for you in your case. All right, so enough about databases. Um, let's talk about the internet. And you would think that I wouldn't have to teach you about internet searches because all you need to know is Google and typing in search terms into their what they call a query box. Where's my? I don't have to write that down. You don't need to know that. The search box is called a query box. Um, but there are things I'm going to write down on my blue board here. It's possible for nearly anyone to do an internet search with Google. It's very simple and straightforward, but it's also possible to do better and worse searches. And you want to do a better search, and you want to kind of have more powerful tools than just knowing that you type a word into the search box and away you go. First of all, if we're talking about Google, of course, we're talking about search engines, right? Google is a search engine, and everybody knows about it because it's the best. It really is. I remember when Google first hit the scene, and my friend Don asked me, "Dude, did you try Google yet? It's intense." And it was like, ooh, Google, some new drug or something. But it was an improvement over earlier search engines because it was a couple of things. It did such a good job of bringing up sites that you probably wanted, right? That's the magic of Google, is that they have figured out what's called an algorithm, right? The kind of formula that processes your search and brings up probably things that are valuable for you. I can tell you, back in the day, in the early 90s, searches didn't always do that, but when Google came along, they did it pretty well. Also, the Google page was just the same as it is now, blank, right? Just has the query box in the middle and maybe sort of an amusing image. But other than that, it's blank. Most search engines had very busy pages with lots of distractions and ads and so forth because they were trying to make money. Google, they make their money, but they do it differently. They didn't clutter their homepage with ads and clickbait and things like that. So Google, yes, Google. I've got a statistic here: 70 to 90% of all searches worldwide are done through Google. But there are others, right? There's Bing. You've heard of Bing.com. Annoyingly, Bing pops up almost automatically on some computers if they're running Microsoft software, because Bing is Microsoft's search engine, and I guess it's considered to be a good search engine. It favors kind of older, more established sites, so it's going to probably put near the top of your list a lot of things that have been around for a while. It gets about 5 to 10% of the searches in the world are done through Bing, I guess. Yahoo. That one's been around a long time. It's not what it used to be. It used to be very popular, even dominant. Its searches tend to be, as far as I can tell, more broad. They sort of reach farther into the web. Another valuable one, Google Scholar. If you haven't heard of this before, this is like a magic search engine here. Google Scholar. It's Google, but it brings up only more kind of academically credible sites leads you to a lot of peer-reviewed articles and things like that. It's very helpful when you're doing college research. There's something called the Internet Archive. If you're looking for a website that has changed and you want to get back to some page that you saw earlier in time, I guess since the 1990s they've been taking snapshots of web pages and archiving them. There's something called Dogpile. And there's another one. Let's see, which one did I have? Oh yeah, there's another one called Yippee. And there used to be one called Metacrawler. I don't know if it's still there, but these two are what they call meta search engines. So if you do a search through Dogpile or Yippee, or another one is ask.com, used to be called Ask Jeeves. These three are what they call meta search engines. They go out and they search not just the internet websites, but they search through other search engines. And I guess there's some benefit to that. The thing is that all of these will give you something different, right? Google tends to do the best, but sometimes, on a specific search, another search engine might bring up things that Google didn't bring up for you, right? So sometimes these other search engines are valuable because they search more broadly. Sometimes they're searching things that they'll bring up things that have more credibility, like Google Scholar. They might search, the web of the past. There are some that search that do, they're connected to charities, like this one that I saw called EcoSer, SER. Every search that you do, a little bit of money goes towards planting a tree somewhere in the world to kind of offset the carbon footprint of your search. There's several of them that are concerned with privacy, and there's this one called DuckDuckGo. This really has nothing to do with academic research, but lots of people are concerned about what's going to happen to their data. Google is very attractive and popular because it's so good, but they also track your searches and they share your data. Share meaning selling your data to other people. That's why after you do a Google search, you'll start seeing ads for things that you're interested in because they're watching, right? If that kind of thing matters to you, then something like DuckDuckGo is good. There's ones that I won't even list here, but there's like this one called Baidu that's very popular in China. Yandex, it's very popular in Russia. There's one I'll put on here for you that's supposed to have good filters for family-friendly content. If that's you, SwissCows.com, whatever the heck that means. Swiss cows, like Swiss cheese. All right. So it's smart to go beyond just Google and to experiment with some other search engines just to see whether you get different results. There's also, most search engines have an advanced search feature, right? And maybe I can cue that up in a minute. Let's see if I can do that fast. See how fast I can do it. All right. Where do they hide it now? You see that the famous, not famous, well, famous, familiar Google page. I don't see it anymore. But there's often on many search engines, and somewhere with Google you can do it as well. There's advanced search. We can just search for advanced search. Google advanced search. So there's more than one way to get to things, right? So with advanced search, you can specify that you want to find a page with all these words, but not any of those words. They can they have to it has to be a .gov site or .com, .edu, or you know, it's in such and such a language, and you can really get a lot of control over your search by going to the advanced search feature. Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk about was what they call Boolean operators. There was a mathematician named, what was his first name? George, maybe? I think a British mathematician named Boole, and he contributed, how do I say it? I'm not a mathematician. His big thing was these kind of logical terms that are now often used in search engines and searches. The words and, or, and not. Right? Basically, whenever you're doing a Google search and you put in the search box a number of terms, Google is considering that to be and, right? So if you said John and Reitz, it would look for web pages that have both my first and my last name, right? If you use or, and again, these terms are capitalized when you use them. So you'd say John or Reitz, then Google would find all the websites it could that have the word John Reitz in it and the word John in it, right? Either one of those, it would bring it up. So this actually or gives you more sites, more results. Not if I said instead Reitz, but or let's say John, but not Reitz, with capital letters there, it would bring back all the sites it could find that has the word John in it, but not the word Reitz. Not sure why you'd want to do that. Here was a good example that I saw. Jaguar, not car, right? You're looking for the animal. You can eliminate car that way. Now, different search engines will have different systems for using these Boolean operators. I think what happens currently on Google is instead of not, they have a minus sign. If you put a minus sign just before a term, it will not give you any websites that include that term in it, right? There's another one that I would call must have. I don't know what they actually call it, but if not is indicated by a minus sign, must have is indicated by a plus sign. So if you did a search where you said you want John Reitz and plus Henry, because you're trying to find, Henry Ford or whatever. Um, it'll eliminate all the other. This plus sign is right next to the H, right? There's a space here, but no space there. The plus sign gets pushed up against a plus or minus sign pushed up against that term, and it will make sure that all the websites it brings up has that term in it. Another thing you can do, um, you can ask for quotation marks around any string of words, and it will bring up only sites that have that whole string exactly in that order, right? Um, so that one you could certainly get some kind of results. But if you did something like threw in another word, um, English, well, you might find something. There might be a website out there that says something like John Reitz English teacher, but probably it'll say, "Oh, we don't find anything with that exact string." Right? So putting quotes around something can help you. If you remember that there was a particular phrase or something that you saw and you want to find a site that has that particular phrase, or if say a student plagiarized a paper, then an instructor could take a suspicious sentence, put it in quotation marks, and send it off to Google, and it'll bring up the site that has that string of characters. All right. Another one is near. Although I guess I heard that Google currently uses the word around instead. Um, and so if you did something like this, and the search was John around, well, let's say Reitz around Newhouse. I'm pretending that I'm doing a genealogical search. My grandmother's maiden name was Newhouse, and so if I did a search Reitz around parentheses for Newhouse, it would find websites in which these two names were within 4 words of each other. Right? There's all kinds of tricks like this. Oh, here's another one. Um, um, the asterisk. You can use that as a what they call it's like a wild card, right? If you do a search on PSYCH asterisk, you'll get psychology, psychological, psychologist, anything that psych, psyche, anything that begins with that string, right? Which is sometimes helpful because you're looking for, well, that's a good example right there. You can do a search within a particular site. I just learned this today by, if I did something like Reitz site colon hfcc.edu, it would search for the term Reitz, looks like there's a dot there, but there's not. It'll look for the word REITs all over the Henry Ford Community College.edu website. All right, I hope you're writing some of these down. They can be helpful for you. Anything else? No other Boolean operators. Okay. Other things to talk about. Oh, yeah. Um, in the edit menu of your web page search, let's see if that's possible to show you here. If you're using Apple, of course, this is going to be different um, it's going to be different from PC world. But if you're doing a web search and um, you're looking for a particular term, like it brings up a web page that has the name REITs in it, but you can't find the name REITs anywhere. If you click on the edit menu, you get a drop down menu, and it'll say find on this page. There's also a shortcut, and some of you would know this from your Microsoft PC experience. I should have looked this up before the video, but it's worth looking into. You could do a Google search on it and find that find function, right? Good. I think we're doing pretty well. That's about all I have to say about internet searches, I think. We're going to say more about internet searches and and kind of more generally about search results, not only on the internet but in books and periodicals. The next couple of classes on our calendar are about evaluating sources, and that's a tricky and important thing. So we're going to look into that in the next video. All right. See you then.